Hey, everybody, this is Harvey Sluggo Wasserman back for the 206th Green Grassroots Emergency Election Protection Coalition Zoom call. We are starting with 40 people here on January 13th. I am talking with you from Los Angeles. My home in Los Angeles is surrounded by four fires, two of which are very, very large. The Palisades fire to the left, to the west, and the Eaton fire to the east, just east of Burbank. And we are all, of course, terrified. We're living on pins and needles here. And we're also grateful for one thing, which is the Diablo Canyon nuclear power plant has not yet blown up. But Governor Gavin Newsom has way overstepped any kind of decency and is allowing Diablo Canyon to continue to operate as we suffer through these fires. More than 25 people are dead already in Los Angeles, along with incalculable damage and a horrendous air quality. It's probably the worst air quality in America since 9/11. We have to understand that we are downwind here from two very large nuclear plants, which are surrounded by earthquake faults. And they are 4 or 5 hours north of here. God forbid those reactors should be hit with earthquake faults. They are embrittled. With earthquakes, they're embrittled. They will send a radioactive cloud down here. And what's going on in LA would be child's play now compared to what could happen if Diablo Canyon blows up. We did have an agreement in 2018 that was signed by Gavin Newsom, who was then the lieutenant governor, now the governor. The governor then was Jerry Brown. And the agreement was to shut Unit 1 in 2024, last year, and shut Unit 2 in 2025. Newsom in 2022 waltzed in and killed that deal and has also destroyed the rate structure in California that was promoting a fantastic rooftop solar industry. They've killed 17,000 jobs, and they're still running those godforsaken nuclear plants outside of San Luis Obispo. So the terror we really face after this fire and then the coming earthquake that we know is coming is what's going to happen at Diablo Canyon, those two nuclear plants. You know, Newsom has been criticized, as has the mayor, Karen Bass, for not being sufficiently prepared. I guarantee you there's zero preparation for dealing with a radioactive cloud like Fukushima come pouring into to LA, where I live. And I'm not happy about it, as you can tell. I want to tell Gavin Newsom and all your listeners out there that it's long past time to shut the two reactors at Diablo Canyon. If this isn't a lesson, what is? Let's see your plan for dealing with a radioactive cloud pouring down the California coast into Los Angeles. It's unspeakable. The human toll, the property damage, but our children, our grandchildren. Let's say that Gavin Newsom, you have no business. It is a cardinal sin to continue to operate those two reactors, especially in light of what we've seen down here now in the midst of these fires. So, Governor Newsom, while you're at it here, keep to your agreement from 2018 and shut those reactors now. Thank you very much. This has been Harvey Sluggo Wasserman from California Solartopia at KPFK and from the Green Grassroots Emergency Election Protection Coalition Zoom calls. All right. Thank you very much. It's now 2:05 in California time. We have 53 people with us, and we also have with us two truly great characters on the American literary scene. ALEX MATTHEISSEN, whose father, Peter, wrote a truly great book about Leonard Peltier, In the Spirit of Crazy Horse. And we have ROSE STYRON, who is a national treasure, to say the least. Rose is a co-founder of Amnesty USA. She's a truly great poet. Her wonderful autobiography, Beyond This Harbor, was published, a year or two ago. I had the great honor of reviewing it for the Progressive magazine and their website. I've known Rose quite a while. In fact, I'll tell you a generational story. Rose Styron, when I was on Martha's Vineyard, my twin daughters were 5. And Rose, you gave my twin daughters a beautiful matching hand-painted T-shirts.
I did.
And I just sent you a picture of my granddaughter wearing one of those T-shirts. So there we go. Talk about continuity. So Rose, your book, your fabulous book, Beyond This Harbor, talks about your work about many things, about also about your husband, departed husband, the wonderful William Styron, who wrote Sophie's Choice, Confessions of Nat Turner. He's a fabulous guy, and of course, one of the great writers in all our history, William Styron. And thanks to you, had the pleasure of knowing him. And I once had a car ride with Bill from your home in Roxbury to the Vineyard. Thankfully, I had read all his books before I got in the car, so that was important. But you are a marvelous poet, and you are also a truly important activist on the American scene. And one of the things you've been dealing with, which is what we've been dealing with on these calls, is getting Leonard Peltier, basically saving his life. And you've been very active with that. You and Alex Matthiesen, whose father wrote In the Spirit of Crazy Horse. What can you tell us now, or what would you like to tell us about the Leonard Peltier case and what people on this call, we have about 65 people with us, what can we do?
Well, what we can do first is to write and call anyone we know in Washington, definitely the president, if you have any access to the president or to the White House. We only have a few more days, and what we're hoping to do is to get Leonard Peltier, who just had his 80th birthday, released from maximum prison in Florida, where he is being dreadfully locked down and mistreated. And now at 80 has many, many health issues. We tried to get him even to a medical facility, and that has been refused. He is in prison for the last 50 years because 50 years ago, on his Native American reservation, two FBI guys with guns came in to the reservation, and a young native shot them both dead. And they could never find out who the young man was. He luckily escaped. And so they pinned it on Leonard, who was 30 at the time and really honored by his tribe. He wasn't there when it happened, but they found him and accused him first of murdering the two, and secondly, when that didn't quite work, of aiding and abetting two other young natives. And the young natives were cleared, but they had to have someone, so they gave Leonard two consecutive life sentences. And I became involved with him through my dear friend Peter Matheson, whose son Alex has been fantastic in letter writing, and he was in the White House somewhere when Clinton was there. He can tell you more about that. But through Amnesty and through all the other human rights groups that I've been working with, President Jimmy Carter was the first who made human rights a national cause and pursued it from his White House and afterwards. So it seems to me quite fitting that today, after Jimmy has been honored and buried, that we would try to pursue getting Leonard released.
Well, very well stated. Alex Matheson, your dad wrote the book, as they say, both literally and figuratively, on the Peltier case. What do you want to tell us about what we're doing? We got 71 people with you here. And by the way, we are live streamed, and this will be rebroadcast on the radio late in New York on Thursday. But go ahead, Alex Matheson, please.
Yeah, thank you, Harvey, and thank you, Rose. Rose just gave you guys a terrific summary of the whole case. Where we're at now, as Rose pointed out, is that we only have, or Leonard, I should say, only has 6 days left during which President Biden can issue a grant of clemency, which would allow him to be released from prison and to go home to his tribe and to his family, and to, most importantly, seek the medical health that medical treatment that he desperately needs. He's, as Rose said, he's got diabetes, kidney failure, heart disease. He's nearly blind. He's a couple years overdue for getting eye surgery to help with the sight, and he's not obviously getting any of that. And he's living in conditions which, by any definition, are torture in the Coleman One prison in northern Florida. So it's a desperate situation. Unfortunately, four presidents before him, starting with Clinton, have had the opportunity to issue a grant of clemency and have passed on it. We can only assume that the FBI, who has been determined to make sure that Leonard never sees the light of day in terms of what it looks like outside a prison again. It's well known and well documented that they have mounted a prolonged, rigorous campaign for the last 3 decades to make sure that Leonard never is set free. And they've put pressure on the White House, the Parole Commission, the Department of Justice, and wherever else they can. And it's long past time for him to be freed. First of all, there's a real question as to whether he had anything to do with it whatsoever. He claims that he's innocent. But one thing we know for certain is that he was railroaded into prison. There is no concrete evidence that he had anything to do with this, aid and abet the murders, let alone to be the murderer himself. He's served already almost 50 years in prison. He's considered the U.S. government's #1 political prisoner. It is long past time, decades past time, to let him go home to his family and friends and to die a peaceful death. And hopefully, if he does get home, hopefully he'll have a couple years left in him. But he's really not in good shape, and he really needs our help. And so, like you said, Harvey, and Rose said at the beginning, if anybody on this call has any access to Joe Biden and Jill Biden, his wife, the First Lady, please use those connections. Rose and I published an op-ed in the Guardian last week, which, if I may say, is a very good, succinct summary of the situation for Leonard, and use that as an education tool and to try and get elected officials in Washington to take action. We have very little time left.
Well, we do have a state. Oh, go ahead, Rose. Rose?
Also, that both Desmond Tutu and the president of South Africa have asked in the past for Leonard's release. And there is a rumor that the Pope feels the same way. And so I'm very disappointed that because Biden, who was on his way to Italy, might have seen the Pope, and maybe it would have come up, maybe not. But certainly he's considered by the world, Leonard is considered by the world, America's #1 political prisoner, as Alex.
And as a co-founder, ROSE STYRON, of Amnesty USA, you have taken up this case and been with it quite a while. We have TATANKA BRICCA with us. TATANKA works hand in glove with the tribes. We have suggested on this call that Leonard be remanded to the custody of his tribe, which would not require a clemency, I guess. But the question then would be, would Trump be able to grab him back from the tribe? TATANKA, do you want to talk about that briefly? And then I want to call on, we do have a state senator with us, Rose and Alex, Jeff from Maryland, and so he'll come after TATANKA, please.
Yeah, anybody, as both Alex and Rose have talked about, anybody with access to Biden or somebody who is close to Biden, please take that action to call them. I had a friend in Italy and one from the United States who would have been there at the Vatican when he went, and so it doesn't take. I think if there were a second call from Pope Francis to Joe Biden, and this is just my language about how important this is for whatever, because he is a practicing Catholic and he does respect the Pope. And so if Pope Francis could basically say, for whatever sins you may have fallen into, this, you can really do something to help yourself with this one. I don't want to make light of it, but he does. I think he might possibly listen. We've heard from Chase Iron Eyes on this call about the role of the FBI the full 2 years before, and why Leonard was there in the first place, and the fact that those guys, the FBI people who went after Leonard and who were responsible for killing, probably arming and killing, having neighbors kill neighbors at Pine Ridge, about 100 Lakota people. Those guys went to the very top of the FBI, and their predecessors have been there. So it's like they're very tied in their ways. They don't want that story out. They don't want the story out that the way we conduct things overseas with the CIA is the very way the FBI has dealt with Native people and a few others here. So that's the underlying thing. And Rose, I want to thank you. I did meet you. I'm sure you don't remember, but Joan Baez recruited me after I had to give medical leave to the UFW at the end of 72. So in January of 73, when I was better, she brought me over to meet Janetta, hear her story, and I agreed to, be the first full-time organizer of Amnesty International West Coast, and took everything I learned from Caesar and Dolores, and we created our own board and, did the whole story. But I did meet you and William, also with Sally Lilienthal and Vic and Lorraine Honig and a bunch of others. And I just wanted to thank you for all you've done throughout the years, and for your beautiful writing, and your husband, of course, his great work. And Alex, I did meet Peter briefly, and I used his book, and I used the movie organizing all the time. So he left a great legacy.
Yes, he was a great guy, and as was William Styron. Senator Mike Hirsch, do you want to introduce Rose to the senator? We do have a state senator with us.
Yes, Jeff Waldstreicher, my own state senator. Thank you so much for joining us, Jeff. The Maryland legislative session is just beginning, so this is a very busy time, and we really deeply appreciate you joining us. Thank you so much for all you do for us in Annapolis and your leadership. Please say hi to everybody. Jeff Waldstreicher.
Well, good evening, everyone. I want to thank Mike Hirsch, a champion of progressive causes here in Maryland and throughout the country, for the invitation to join you tonight. As you know, the Maryland legislative session is beginning, and my sense is part of the reason I'm here tonight is because all the states where you live, your legislative sessions are beginning as well. And in a post-November 5th world, I think it is incumbent upon each of us as progressives to think about how we're able to navigate the next 4 years, which is going to be a challenge, and be responsive to the challenging political environment that we find ourselves in. Maryland, in addition to navigating the challenges of the Trump administration, of course, the second Trump administration, will also have to navigate a budget crisis while keeping our progressive values in mind. This is a budget crisis not created by the incoming president, but instead by some of the choices we've made here in Annapolis, choices that I support, but the bills for those choices are now coming due. And how do we respond to that in a progressive way? So wanted to come and kind of talk to you guys tonight about the progressive values that we share and the progressive policies that we'll be implementing here in Annapolis.
Well, Jeff, while we have Alex and Rose with us, maybe you could get the legislature, the governor, the new senator, to fly down to Florida and spring Leonard from that federal prison. What do you think?
Well, listen, I appreciate your having me on today. I actually know nothing about this case. It'd be inappropriate for me to comment on it, but to the extent that two people lost their lives in this, certainly my thoughts and prayers are with the families of those who were murdered in this incident. And I apologize. I just don't know enough about the case to
Well,
comment.
listen, now you've been introduced. You've got 6 days. You can drive into the White House and bring the legislature with you. But we do need your help and the Maryland legislators' help to get Leonard out, because he, whatever the case, he's never had a fair trial, and he was not given a death sentence. And clearly, medical clemency would be more than appropriate in this case. Rose and Alex, maybe you want to comment on that. But he's not going to survive if he doesn't get out soon. Even just remanding him to his tribe would make all the difference in the world. Rose, Alex, do you want to comment on that?
Well, I think we already covered that, which is, as we've said, he's got many, many health problems. He's, as you say, Harvey, he's not going to survive much longer in prison. And, he's very likely not guilty. But one thing we know is that he was put in prison wrongly based on false evidence, coerced witnesses, a false change of jurisdiction. He shouldn't be there, and he's already served for 50 years. And so for lots of reasons, he should be released. And Joe Biden really is his last hope, and these last 6 days are our last hope to
Well,
help
I
him.
want to say also that freeing Leonard Peltier is Joe Biden's last hope, because if he doesn't, Leonard's soul is on his karma, and he's got a clear choice here. So let's hope he does the right thing, for God's sakes. Rose, do you want to jump in?
I just wanted to say one thing we hadn't said was that the original judge who found who ran the trial for Leonard has apologized publicly.
Oh
and
my God, I didn't know that.
Well, the prosecutor.
Prosecutor.
Yeah, not the judge. the
Prosecutor, boy, getting an apology from a prosecutor is, the camel going through the eye of the needle. So that's really amazing. The list of people who have called for Leonard to be freed is staggering. Desmond Tutu, the Pope, Nelson Mandela, Alex, Rose. Do you have other names to throw into that pot?
Well, lots of folks. Bono, a number of, lots of Hollywood types. A number of politicians have called for his release. But again, I just for the senator's sake, I reposted the Guardian piece that Rose and I wrote and published last week, and that does give folks a very succinct summary of all the main facts and who's come out in support and so on.
So, Senator, if you can take, I read the piece. That's actually why I called you guys. Senator, if you'll read that piece, that would be very helpful. Spread it to your colleagues. The Maryland legislature would be a big plus. And, the clock is ticking. We're down to 6 days.
Even just a resolution from the Maryland legislature would be quite powerful.
Okay, let's work on that. Please. I mean, we did get, against all odds, Julian Assange is on a beach in Australia, and so Leonard Peltier belongs on a lake in Ojibwe, Chippewa country, and let's get it done. Myla Reeson, you have a hand, Myla, and then we'll let you go, Rose and Alex. Really honored to have you with us.
Very
Thank you.
Maryland state is.
Oh, that's right. Rose is from Maryland, so there you go. Go ahead, Myla.
Thanks, Harvey. I had raised my hand. I understand the senator's position, and I just urge you, Senator, to become informed and do a little bit of reading and look into it, because this is so very important. I understand that you can't speak to it now, but
right. It's on the one thing, it would be a great thing to get him freed. On the other hand, I don't want to discuss the horrible karma that would come down on all of us if Leonard does not survive this. And we know that Donald Trump will not get him out. So Joe Biden, I would hate to be Joe Biden and have this on my soul. So good Catholic that he is, let's hope he pays attention. And Rose is a Maryland native, by the way. So votes in Massachusetts now, but, we'll forgive her for that. Okay. All right. Rose Styron and Alex Matthiesen. Oh, well, can you give us a website? We've been posting the Amnesty USA website. Is that the best one for people to go to?
I think it is. And I can also send you afterwards. Leonard has a website, I believe, as well. And so I can send that to you, Harvey, afterwards. Or I can hang around for a few minutes and find it and post it here.
Yeah, you can post it in the chat. That would be great if you can.
Okay.
And Rose Styron, again, one of the world's truly great human beings. And Rose, it's just always a joy to see you. And Alex, great to meet you. I knew your father. There's Rose's wonderful book. It's really an amazing book. I did write a review of it in progressive.org if you want to check it out. I was with Rose when she read it in New York City, read parts of it, and Rose, thank you so much for honoring us with your presence, and you too, Alex. We will proceed with this.
You're,
Sluggo, you're right in there fighting for the best.
Well, thank you so much. You're an inspiration, and Alex, thank you for coming with us. We look forward to the links in the chat.
yeah, I'll put them in there in a second. Just as a parting word, since you guys are so focused on renewable energy and so on, I headed up the campaign in New York City to bring congestion pricing to New York City, and we just had a huge victory.
You won. Heck yes.
After 14 years of slugging it away. And really, there are people that were literally working on it since 1970 and the Mayor John Lindsay's effort. So if you don't know about it, read about it. It's a very important example. It's the first city and state in the country to adopt congestion pricing, where you essentially charge cars and trucks to drive into the most congested part of the city, i.e. the central business district. And because of our efforts, we first passed the statute in 2019. We just got it up and running finally after some delays caused by Trump and others. Got it up and running. But there are other cities, LA, God bless it when it recovers, San Francisco, New York, Portland, Chicago, Washington, D.C., that are very seriously looking at this. So if you guys live in any of those places, you should get involved in the effort to pass congestion pricing, because it's a great example of internalizing externalized cost, i.e. pollution, and reducing our reliance on petroleum.
Well, listen, before you go, I did see a New York Times piece basically celebrating, and the initial reviews have been very good. It appears to be successful. We love to, it's absolutely critical to celebrate our successes, and that's a big one. That's a really big one. Thank you. Thank you.
While I'm here, I'll put a couple of links in the chat room as well. I did an op-ed Times about.
Please do. And we do have a New Yorker with us who's a great newsman, Dave Saltman. Dave, you're up in Riverdale. I don't know if you get to comment on this, but did you want to say something? Dave has made 200 documentary films, long career with major networks. David, I want to comment on Leonard or say
yes, about Leonard. First of all, Harvey, are you okay?
Yes, you missed the geography. We're in between two big fires. Ask me on Thursday after the windstorm passes. But right now, okay. Thank you.
I beg you to get out of there. Please come back to New York.
Okay,
anyway,
yeah.
Leonard,
where the air is nice and clean. Okay, go ahead.
It's better than where you are. Anyway,
Right.
about Leonard Peltier, I've made some, let's call them discrete inquiries, and we talked about the Bruce Curtis precedent for having him remanded to the tribe. And
I want to mention that, David. Let me jump in. I don't know, Rose and Alex, if you know this. David Saltman did a documentary film on a Canadian citizen that was convicted of murder in the United States, and the government remanded him to the Canadian government
after he had served a considerable amount of time at Rahway State Prison in New Jersey. That's right. Bruce Curtis is his name. It's a big case in Canada. They've made films about it. I covered it for ABC television. There's a couple books about it. It's a very well-known case. In Canada, it was a huge cause celeb. There were demonstrations on his behalf, and it all worked.
What's his name, David?
I will tell you the difference between.
Curtis.
Sorry?
What was his name, David?
Bruce Curtis, Curtis.
Yeah, and we suggested on this call to Chase Iron Eyes that the tribe try and get him remanded to the tribe. That's the point.
Here's the difference. What my discrete inquiries disclose, and I don't know how to use this, but I'm going to deliver you a piece of intel that I think has not come out yet in the Leonard Peltier case. The resistance to the pardon or any kind of clemency or whatever is from the FBI.
Yeah.
You don't have to be a genius to figure that out. But that's where the as the Arabs like to say, that's where the dead camel is buried.
Right.
Yeah. No, we're aware.
Since the FBI is about to merge with the KGB, Maybe the situation will change. We don't know.
I don't know. I mean, I'm not proposing this, and I don't really I don't know where to go from here. But the
Well, you
fact,
did a lot. You did a lot raising this case. Nobody knew about this Bruce Curtis case.
I know it's amazing how ignorant people are, with all due respect.
Right. So if we can get Leonard
Myself.
remanded to the tribe, as Bruce Curtis was remanded to the Canadian government,
That's correct.
there we go.
Anyway, give it a shot. I don't know. I'm just thinking, I don't know where to go with this, and this can't be the right answer. But if anybody is at odds with the FBI right now, it's Trump. Is there a way that he could pardon it, and because he hates the FBI so much, or something? I don't know.
David, that's why I often hesitate to say that Biden's Leonard's last hope, because I mean I think technically that is basically true, partly because Leonard is so ill, but it has not escaped my attention that Trump hates the FBI too. So maybe just to spite them.
Maybe that can be. I don't know. I just throw it out there.
Okay.
Do your worst. You know what I mean?
Okay, Tatanka, and then we're going to go to Jeff. We'll let Alex and Rose go. It's wonderful to see you both. Tatanka, go ahead.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of conversation about that Trump factor. What I wanted to bring up is the day after Thanksgiving, a lot of Lakota people, including Leonard's wife and members of his family, came down to Barrios Unidos in Santa Cruz. We spent a whole day with the history of AIM and with dancers and the drum. It was just marvelous, but it was all centered around a 12-foot statue of Leonard that was created from a self-portrait he made in prison on his hands on his knees. It's a beautiful 12-foot statue, and some people have likened it to a more realistic thinker, the way he looks out on the world. And a lot of the tribe is really encouraging that statue. This carries his spirit. The original drawing he did had the energy coming up through his feet as he's gazing out. So they are basically already anticipating if he's still in prison and how to bring his presence to people around. I wasn't prepared today to tell you how to find out how to access that, but Barrios Unidos, Santa Cruz, and Nane Alejandros has been running that place for over 50 years. He's a ex-Vietnam veteran and a lifelong nonviolent activist. His mentor was Mr. B, Harry Belafonte, and he's a tremendous person, very humble and very effective. So,
well, we know, Rose, I know you had a long friendship with Harry Belafonte, and his daughter remains very active, I believe. So thank you for that, Tatanka. Real quick, Mike Hirsch.
There it is.
Oh, there it is. Wow.
Well,
Look at that. That's amazing.
It definitely captures them. Tatanka, I have a quick question for you. Do you know if either Oren Lyons or Winona LaDuke are active Leonard supporters and are at all involved in trying to get him released?
I know they are active supporters. I don't know what they've done recently. I can find out and get in touch with you.
Yeah, well, I just got you probably know Randy Hayes, right? My friend Randy.
Very well, yeah.
Yeah. So actually, Harvey, I think he's who introduced us a long time ago. But anyway, he just gave me Winona's and Oren's cell number, so I was going to contact them actually about something else, but first about this. So I will do that as well. But I think it'd be nice for them to hear from us and see if they can get engaged these last 6 days.
Well, Oren Lyons is one of the great. There's a great fact about Oren Lyons. Oren Lyons played lacrosse at Syracuse with Jim Brown.
Right.
And they're both in the Lacrosse Hall of Fame. And Oren Lyons is an amazing presence. I used to show both his and Winona's videos to my classes when I was teaching U.S. history. If anybody can get them out, it would be get Leonard out. It would be Oren and Winona. So let's hope.
Yeah, I'll talk to them. And the reason I'm trying to get them for something else is everybody should know that the Peter Matheson Center, to the extent that folks are fans of my dad's, we created something called the Peter Matheson Center. We're creating these Matheson talks, and we want either Winona or Oren to be one of our first speakers. So that's why.
Oh, great. Okay. Yeah. Let me introduce you very quickly to Dennis Bernstein. Dennis Bernstein is a friend of our gathering. and he is the host of the Flashpoints radio show at KPFA in Berkeley, and it's nationally syndicated. Dennis, do you want to say hi to Rose Styron and Alex Matthiesen?
Hello to everybody. Just a point of information. Flashpoints was at the Barrios Unidos event for Leonard Peltier. We did an extended interview with the sculptor and a whole bunch of other original witnesses. We did about a half-hour documentary. I don't have the date, but if you just Google Flashpoints at Leonard Peltier, it will come up, and there was some extraordinary testimony that we took down on that. Just to add
that was great.
Well,
and it was the day after Thanksgiving, whatever that date is.
I will, Dennis. I will jointly email you and Alex, and you'll be in touch with each other. And Rose and Dennis is a great guy, and it's great to have you all together. Mike Hirsch, is there something further you wanted to say, or is that a legacy hand?
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly remind everybody, and we tend to kind of jump in the deep end. We don't necessarily always provide complete background, but Leonard Peltier was basically railroaded. There were a lot of improprieties in his prosecution, and the prosecutor admitted to that. He's the longest standing political prisoner currently behind bars in the United States. His health is failing. He's got advanced diabetes. He's lost his sight. And I also wanted to emphasize that a few dozen Democrats in the House of Representatives have circulated a letter drafted by Congressman Raul Grijalva of Arizona, urging the president in these waning days of the Biden administration to let Leonard go. So it's really pretty much an open and shut case at this point.
Can you circulate that letter?
Sure.
Mercy. Yeah, do you need a copy, Alex and Rose? You haven't seen it?
I'd like to see it. I haven't seen that. I mean, I know.
All right,
yes.
I will jointly email you guys, and Mike, you can send them the letter.
Please.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely, Rose. You were going to say?
No.
Okay. All right, you guys. So listen, Rose, go jump in the Vineyard Haven Harbor there for me, and
it's a little cold there, Sluggo.
Well, you can chip away the ice, and it's wonderful to see. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Rose. You're true.
Can I just say one more thing, Harvey?
Go ahead, TATANKA, please.
I know from Chase going into the holiday, and I mentioned this to people around the solstice, it's very common for them to go into deep ceremony, particularly now, because Kristi Noem, was the one that pointed the finger and called he and his, at that time, very young daughter and his wife as terrorists, in the Standing Rock case. And Kristi has now been elevated by Trump, hasn't been approved. Has she been approved yet?
No.
Anyway, so they're preparing for the worst there. And we don't have to talk about it now, but the ICE raids have already started in California in Bakersfield. And I can talk about that later. Camila Chavez of the Dolores Huerta Foundation, we were on the phone on Saturday. And they're moving up through. They had a protest that started just with a few people from the Dolores Huerta Foundation on Saturday. It grew to over 1,000 people. There were 60 beds in the Marriott Hotel in Bakersfield that were there for the employees of ICE, and they're going up through the valley. So they were caught unawares, the people, because they thought at least they'd have until the 20th to prepare for this, but it's already in motion, and other places in the state too. So, but of particular importance will be Standing Rock and, of course, Pine Ridge. So let's just keep that in mind. If he's not present here, it's because they are really doing a lot of work. Elders, the elder wisdom with the young people and preparing them for the next years of fight.
Well, that's what we got. Let's just hope Leonard is with us. Again, Rosie and Alex, thank you so much. And put whatever you need in the chat. And we are good to go. Thank you, Alex. And again, Rosie, I hope to see you soon. Okay. All right, everybody. We can quickly now go with Senator Jeff Waldstreicher of the Maryland legislature. And then we're going to jump in and talk about Los Angeles. And then we're going to do a wrap on what needs to be said about the 2025 election, any irregularities, the 14th Amendment case, all that stuff. So please go ahead, Senator Waldstreicher, and tell us what the latest is.
Well, thank you again for having me. I really appreciate it. And one more shout out to progressive champion Mike Hirsch, who here in Maryland is an incredible advocate on behalf of the values we all share. I feel a little bit overdressed tonight. We, like some states, on Monday evenings, we go into legislative session. It's an old school relic of when people were taking horse and buggies to Annapolis. So Monday was a travel day, and we didn't go in till late Monday. So that's why I'm all dressed up for your call. But happy to be here. So listen, Maryland, like a number of other states, has really done an incredible job funding alternative energy and the move away from fossil fuels because of the crisis of climate change. We're also investing in our school systems and especially early childhood education, not just age 4, which is the traditional age that people talk about when they talk about early childhood education, but age 3 as well. And so bringing essentially the start of school down from age 5 to age 3 to make sure everyone, but especially underprivileged children, have an early start in our schools. And then we've also been funding a number of other progressive priorities here in the state, making sure our state workers are paid appropriately. That includes our teachers, but also less glamorous jobs that you don't hear about as much, such as correctional workers, police officers, firefighters, and other state employees. But all of these things have a cost. And now, as I mentioned earlier, that cost is coming due. And coming up with a progressive solution that doesn't burden our working class citizens is really the work of this legislative session. And so we're just starting. The session only started last Wednesday, so we're less than a week in here. But that's really the challenge that our state has. And I'm sure many of you live in states where that is a challenge as well and part of the conversation. So I have always supported progressive solutions to our needs here in Maryland. That includes holding big corporations accountable, especially multi-state corporations that utilize various LLCs to get around our tax laws. And of course, we have to make sure that those who are the most fortunate among us are paying their fair share as well. We have real needs here in Maryland, and we're willing to fund them, and we have to stand up for our values to do so. And so thank each and every one of you for having me this evening. Thank you again to Mike, and thank you to our host tonight, and happy to take any questions you might have.
Well, of course, we want to get Maryland 100% solar energy. We do have a great community in Tacoma Park of people who actually work in the anti-nuclear movement. And very well, Paul and Linda Gunter are there. Tim, well, there are other people in the community.
Yep.
Scott Emmon used to live there, but so we want Maryland to be 100% renewable as soon as possible. We're going to talk about that in the context of the fires in California. But there you go, and we do hope, Jeff, Senator, that you will join us in the campaign to save Leonard Peltier's life, basically. So thank you for that. Nicole Ung, did you want to ask the senator a question here? I got to unmute you. We have 82 people. Go ahead, Nicole.
Sorry, I turned on my computer. I have to
Okay,
mute
it's
stuff.
all right. One other.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I put in the chat, the email for the DOG, the lawyer at the DOG that we can all send the request to. And also my contact at the State Department. And if our representative can help with that too, it'd be
Right.
great.
And we want to mention the case of Steve Donziger, the lawyer who's been prosecuted by Chevron, a private prosecution, truly astounding, and he needs clemency as well. Thank you, Nicole, for that.
Yes, and
Mike
also,
Hirsch?
can
go
I
ahead.
add Charles Littlejohn,
Oh,
the
yes,
IRS
Charles Littlejohn.
whistleblower?
Charles Littlejohn as well. Thank you for that, Nicole. Mike Hirsch, did you want to say something further? And then we're going to start talking about the fires in LA.
Yes, while we still have the senator, I understand that the Trump administration, the incoming Trump administration, is making noises about going after our sisters and brothers who are undocumented and other vulnerable people. And what is the talk in Annapolis about how to protect our neighbors who might be under the gun from the Trump administration?
Yeah, great question, Mike. Thank you for that. I really appreciate it. As you know, Maryland, because we are under such progressive leadership, especially during the first Trump administration, it erected a lot of protections against some of the abuses that we're about to see. And that was really the leadership, for those of you who know him, our former Attorney General Brian Frosh, a progressive champion for decades, really led the charge on that. So a lot of the protections that the state needs to have are already in place because we did it the first time around. So, for example, Maryland, local prisons and jails were being rented out to ICE to hold excess detainees prior to deportation. We banned that practice in Maryland and no longer allow it. We also banned private prisons in Maryland. And so the building of private prisons in order to hold detainees is unlawful under our state law. We have the Lake and Riley Act coming down the pike federally. As you know, as many of you know, that bill has the votes to pass. And my hope is that if the federal government goes in that direction, if the Senate votes on behalf of the bill, that there are amendments that they can add to the bill to help mitigate some of the issues related to due process in that bill. And then, of course, here in Maryland, we just, we stand ready. We always have to be vigilant. And so whatever crazy idea the new administration brings down the pike, we have to make sure that we are ready to respond to it. Maryland also has designated places that we consider inappropriate for immigration enforcement. That includes our schools, our churches, our hospitals. If immigration enforcement is to happen, it shouldn't happen in places that are that should really be safe places. And Maryland law demands that.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that. And God knows what we're headed into, 6 days on the road and whatever. And Jeff, Senator, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me. As always, appreciate it.
Well, before you leave, I think John Fitzgerald wants to throw one thing at you about the 14th Amendment, John. John Fitzgerald here, hold on. Or are you just going to join us in a minute? We can't hear you. You're not unmuted.
Yeah, unmute, John, if you can.
Go ahead. Yes.
There you go.
I just wanted to say hi and thank you to my former state rep, Jeff Waldstreicher. I lived in the town of Chevy Chase for many, many years and was a supporter of Jeff's while we were there, and I appreciate his continued good service. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Very good. So we're going to jump into, we're going to talk about LA now, and then we're going to go and talk about all the residual issues that we want to wrap up in one way or another, including the 14th Amendment, having to do with the 2024 election. So in terms of Los Angeles, unfortunately, I am not where it looks like behind me. I am actually in the San Fernando Valley, as Steve has shown before on the maps. I'm between the two big fires in LA, the Palisades fire to the west, which is thankfully on the other side of the 405, one of the world's biggest freeways. I think it's 18 lanes, 16 or 18, which is working as a firewall. Here you can see it, and you can see that red down in the middle to the left, toward the bottom. That's the Palisades fire, and then you see the 405 where it has come up to, and that's where the Getty is, the Getty Museum, whose grounds burned. But believe me, with several $1 billion worth of art and artifacts in there, they have protected there. I read today there was a triple concrete wall around the Getty, but they seem to have lost their gardens. But that freeway has been keeping the fire from going deeper into Los Angeles. And then at the right, you see the Eaton fire, which is just north of Pasadena. And Vinny DeStefano, who's been on our calls, has been on the street, looked down the street and seen this fire. And it's just east of Burbank. And so the big question now is the winds are about to pop up. It doesn't look like they're blowing very hard now. We have not had rain here, since the beginning of time. And that's a big part of the problem. The other questions now, there are a lot of questions arising. And one of them is, how did these fires start? Now, today in the LA Times, there's a big piece that there was allegedly a fireworks display in the Pacific Palisades area maybe in Malibu, that was on New Year's Eve, and then my birthday, by the way, and then was not fully put out. And that's not cool. And they're starting to say maybe that was it. There has been remarkably little discussion of the power lines. Now, power lines in 2018, and there's been a whole price list published of what it would cost to bury the power lines here. It'd be very expensive, but obviously the solution is to have rooftop solar on every building and to have microgrids so that you don't have big power lines. You have small power lines being in neighborhoods. I'm in a cul-de-sac, be a perfect spot for a microgrid, and you won't get these spark fires. In 2018, the fire that burned the town of Paradise was 100% definitely started by faulty power lines from PG&E up there. Here we have the DWP and Edison. And the theory basically is, and there will be forensic studies over the next year, that the very strong winds knocked over the power lines here and there and sparked the fires. That would be entirely credible and totally predictable that would happen. We don't often get 80 to 100 mile an hour winds here, especially not on the tail end of a 4-month drought. So, that's the standard explanation. Very few people are talking about the power lines. They don't want to, drag in the DWP, which is Muni-owned, and Edison, which is a giant, Southern California Edison, a giant utility. I will say, if it turns out that these fires, or even one of them, it was started by a power line from the DWP, the Department of Water and Power, it will bankrupt the city because the DWP is owned by the city of Los Angeles. And if they're liable, the damage suits are probably just going to wipe out the utility. We have this in Northern California. PG&E was found guilty of more than 80 counts of involuntary manslaughter, 100% justified. They pleaded guilty. They also they incinerated 8 people in San Bruno in 2010, which they also pleaded guilty to. Again, federal manslaughter charges. But God forbid if the DWP is found guilty here, the financial situation will be enormous. Now, the question that we're raising, Milo Reeson and I and others, is what do you do about Diablo Canyon? We got these 2 atomic reactors, 4 or 5 hours north at San Luis Obispo on the ocean, surrounded by earthquake faults, seriously embrittled, they're more than 40 years old. If they blow up, which they could, the industry likes to say that the reactors can't blow up, but 4 of them did at Fukushima, not to mention the one at Chernobyl. Different breed at Chernobyl, that's a Russian reactor, but the 4 reactors that blew up Fukushima were American reactors, and could very easily happen at Diablo Canyon. They should have been shut down. There was a beautiful plan drawn up. Unit 1 was supposed to shut last year, Unit 2 this year, and Newsom intervened and kept them open at an enormous cost, over $11 billion to keep these reactors open in over-market charges. And nobody's talking about this except Milo and me and a few others on Pacifica. The governor and the mayor are being basically crucified for not being prepared, as if you could prepare for this kind of accident. But I guarantee you there's no credible plans whatsoever to deal with a radioactive cloud pouring down the coast into LA County. I mean, there's 10 million people here, and nobody's talking about it, and we need to talk about that. I will say and I'm going to go to Nancy Naparco, there is buzz on the internet that these fires were deliberately started to pave the way for the Olympics, and that there were electronic and other means used to set these fires. It's inevitable stuff like that's going to come out, and who knows how credible it is. But that's the situation now. Until Friday, when the winds go away, I won't know if we're going to have a house. But right now, somehow, miraculously, we do, and a lot of people don't. And there are 25 people dead, and it could happen again in a heartbeat. So that's what we know. Nancy Naparco, you're in Santa Monica. You've been okay, knock on wood, thank God so far. But go ahead, What did you want to say, please?
I'm 0.9 miles from the evacuation area. So the last 6 days, I've been living next to my phone and all the alerts 24/7. But knock on wood, I've been very lucky. I still have my home. And I've been following the neighborhood blogs, and I agree with 90% of what you say, Harvey. No one's mentioned the nuclear plants. I'm concerned about that. But like you, I'm really upset at this emphasis of blaming the mayor for having been out of town when this started and blaming the governor. To me, the number one thing is global warming. And people don't want the responsibility for what we've done to burn fossil fuels. And the way I look at it is other parts of the country have paid their debt because of global warming. And this is Californians' turn. And it's tragic. People have died. One of my good friends lost everything. And she's going to move in here. But global warming has been under-publicized. And we've got to turn the page and start conserving our environment.
Absolutely, and thank you for that, Nancy. Paul Newman is your near neighbor in Santa Monica. Paul, you still haven't added Eleanor's picture to Franklin back. Well,
Sorry about that, Harvey.
She and I used to go out together. But anyway, Paul, you have solar panels on your house, so
Yeah,
you're doing your part, and your house is much safer for that. A big cause of house fires is that ashes or cinders come down from the sky and land on roof, and all it takes is a small cinder to set a roof on fire. But they're not going to set your solar panels on fire. So that's a piece of protection there. But go ahead, Paul.
Well, also, I have tar paper in certain spots that require maybe a little sprinkler there. I noticed that Bobby Kennedy on his house put sprinklers on, and it saved his house on the top of his roof.
Wow.
Which was kind of interesting too. But this blame game is just amazing how it's the right wing that's doing this. And there she is. Send me a copy and I'll put a picture up.
I think that's the night we went out to dinner together, but go ahead, please.
But anyway, what I was going to say was the blame game. I'm on TikTok a lot and going to these panels, and they're showing these actresses like wanting to point the finger and everything, and it's just so insensitive. And I mean, I have friends who I share a friend that Nancy has who lost her house, and her brother lives in the Palisades, and they lost theirs. My doctor, where I go to my doctor, their place is rubble. It's really, really bad. My friend Maureen Cruz, who you know is an activist with Healthcare for Us, she lost her house too. She's staying in Redondo Beach with her grandkids. I mean, it's really terrible. We were in, like Nancy, I'm in the voluntary evacuation zone, and I had to check because they kept moving the borders. I live a block and a half from Montana Street. North of Montana is a mandatory evacuation, and I'm a block and a half away from that. And it is scary. I had to get all my stuff together, get a bug out bag. The idea of I have a guitar collection of about 12, 13 guitars. This was something I just totally didn't expect. And I mean, to feel for those other people who lost their homes, I think and then we got a Congress that is so insensitive, dominated by the Republicans that are questioning the amount of aid that should come to this state. Give me a break. These people are inhuman. What are they doing there?
And of course, you have the mayor of LA as a woman of color, so you're going to expect the blame game there. And of course, they'll go after Gavin Newsom. Although I have no sympathy for Gavin Newsom having short-circuited the shutdown at Diablo Canyon. That is the worst gamble that anybody has ever taken, is to continue to operate nuclear plants on earthquake faults that are 40 years old and deeply embittered. But here you are, and
right, it's neoliberal centrists, Democrats that are a big part of this. I mean, Kenneth Mejia is the LA controller, and I looked at his chart of the Los Angeles budget. 58% of the money goes to the police, and they're not handling the homeless problem, and they should be. You know, really, we need to socialize housing for a lot of these people. Now they have tiny houses. My friend builds them. My friend Zane. There are so many alternatives we have. In the Palisades, they can even use the aid to build tiny houses for people who own the property, or in Eaton Canyon or Altadena. All those places, they're about $78,000 to $120,000, and I know they could do it. We have the money and the resources, but we live in a capitalist system. I mean, and it's this attitude of too fucking bad. I don't, that's bullshit.
Okay, so you have been the first to violate our language code, but it's okay. I
Oh,
love it.
sorry, I forgot we were still on the radio.
You just created 20 minutes of work for Steve Caruso, but don't worry
Oh,
about
sorry,
it.
Steve.
Sorry, Steve. So, but anyway, look, will LA rebuild with microgrids and solar? We'll see, but I don't want to bring it up right now. First thing to do is to get the nuclear plant shut, but that's a big issue. This would not have happened if those houses, every house in LA, had had solar panels and microgrids. This fire would not have happened. And there's just no doubt about it. Because all the rooftops would have been covered and protected, and the power lines would have been going down, and here we are. Thank you, Paul. Thank you for that very much.
Thank you.
Lynn
Thank you,
Feinerman,
Mayor.
go ahead, and then Dennis Bernstein. Lennon?
Yeah, hi, thank you. Yeah, I have friends, I have family, all facing big losses in Pacific Palisades, and also our family home is just east of the 405 in Westwood. So we are on an hourly basis trying to figure out what the winds are going to do and not do. Thank you, Nancy Niparco, for, tuning us into the agony of that. And I just wanted to say that, it's been touted that there's a lot of effort to keep the fires from jumping 405 near Westwood. And I'm curious as to whether it has to do with nuclear medicine and nuclear projects that are being pursued at UCLA. I don't know how much there is. I don't know if anybody's, looked into that, but I would imagine that there is some real danger there.
Yeah, absolutely. And we know there are nuclear facilities at UCLA. Who'd have thought, as Angelinos, that we'd ever say, thank God for the 405? But, here we are. I mean, that thing's got to be maybe, I don't know if it's 100 yards, but it's really wide, and it's clearly been the fire break here. I mean, the Getty, the ground's burned right on the border of the 405, but so far, knock on wood, they haven't jumped. Thank you for that, Nancy. It's just unimaginable what's been happening here. And the air, by the way, is horrifying. I mean, the air quality in LA is probably the worst, as I've said, in America since 9/11. And so everybody needs to be wearing masks. Dennis Bernstein, host of the Flashpoint show. Dennis, go ahead.
Sorry, I'm not sure what I missed and what I didn't. I'm coming in and out doing working on my own show. But tonight we're going to have on Richard Montoya, founder of Culture Clash. She's down there with the hose at the moment, trying to protect stuff. But he's got a lot to say about brown people. Does anybody know whether farm workers are continuing to pick through all these fires?
I don't.
I understand that because they took the hardest hit in terms of COVID, and they are in grave trouble. And they're, you might say, they're between a hot rock and a difficult place. Does anybody have any information about what's happening with them, how they're being treated?
I don't, but I have heard on the radio and TV that a very substantial percentage of the people fighting the fires are prisoners who are being paid, $5 a day. And, there's even a theory out there that one of the reasons they keep the prisons so full out here is so they have bodies to go out and fight the fires. And so I'm sure that, certainly the numerical is true. And and of course the media, we all thank the firefighters, God forbid, God willing, thank you. but nobody ever mentions their prisoners. We have 80 people with us, by the way.
And how about the food that we're all eating by people who are, again, forced to risk their life? By the way, there's a huge firefighting group that's now just arrived, I believe, from Mexico that will also be joining in on the battle.
Well, where is the military in this? I mean, why are we paying trillions of dollars a year for all this equipment and all this personnel, able-bodied men and women who are perfectly fit to be firefighters? We do know the National Guard's been called out, but we got Camp Pendleton right down here. Why haven't the military been funneled in to fight this? And Dennis, I hope you'll find time at some point on Flashpoints to talk about the nuclear connection to preparedness. Clearly, Southern California totally unprepared for the radioactive cloud coming down from Diablo. And I think now is the time, as we look out at what's happening in LA, that people will understand it and put it in perspective. So I hope you can find us a slot to talk about this. I would really appreciate it.
I will definitely fit it in between, continuing coverage of Gaza, where the fires are being created by U.S. weaponry, and when the people run for them, they're being shot. So, but we're on the, Harv, I've been on the Southern California. You've been on many times talking about this struggle, and obviously, in the context of international global warfare, nukes are a problem here, there, and everywhere.
You got it. Okay, bro. Well, call me when you're ready. I'm anxious to come on.
Wait for my call. It's coming.
Okay, thank you. Nancy Naparco, back to you.
Sorry, three short things. I just drove back through the Sepulveda Pass from work, and every one of the exits is closed off. I see no fire on either side of the freeway. And I would say to Lynn that I don't think anyone's worried about nuclear power at UCLA as much as all the multi $10 to $20 million homes on both sides of the freeway. I really think that's a bigger motivation. Number two, there is a settlement for 100 years of primarily Black neighborhoods in the west side of Altadena.
Yeah.
And these people could afford houses and homes that have been passed down through multiple generations. And there is a disproportional loss of this historically huge Black neighborhood, which was clearly middle class.
It's a tragedy.
And finally, I've got to say, besides Canada and Mexico sending us firefighters, the Ukraine has sent us firefighters.
Oh my God.
And I don't hear that mentioned enough.
Thank you for that. Thank you so much. Paul Newman, did you want to jump back in? Oh, you're muted.
Yes. I just wanted to say that 2 or 3 days ago, they had C-130s. The U.S. military sent C-130s filled with something like 38,000 gallons of water, and they sent about 8 of them or 9 of them. So the military is helping fight the fire.
Good. Well, thank goodness
that's
for
all
that.
I wanted to add.
Thank you for that, Paul, and thank you to the military. Okay, Mark Imlay, and then we're going to move to talk about wrapping up.
I worked for the natural resource manager for Army National Guard a couple of decades ago. We put a total end to these terrible fires in military installations. And that is because we, on purpose, had small fires in the right places at the right time to prevent the big fires coming later. And now, finally, what we learned to do in the military is catching up around the rest of the world. I wish they had done more of that in California.
Yeah, well, I heard big discussions. It's hard to do that in LA because there's no farmland between the forest and the housing. So the housing comes right up to the forest lands and to the scrub lands with no agricultural buffer. And so to do backburning is very difficult. It was a very interesting discussion I heard. That's where I also, basically came to see the 405 as a fire break. I will never look at the 405 the same way after this fire. I never thought I'd be thankful for it, but there you go. Thank you for that, Mark. Does anyone else want to chime in on these fires? The nuclear issue has got to be introduced here. Because to ignore it at this point, I can assure you, after viewing the preparedness of the city and the state for dealing with a fire, there are zero plans whatsoever to deal with a radioactive cloud here. And radiation was detected in Tokyo amidst Fukushima about the same distance. And you know, I'm sure I mentioned it to many people, and you'll get a glazed look. But come on, let's be real here. Steve Caruso, and then we're going to go to John Fitzgerald.
Fitzgerald. Yeah, we lost John Breaky here. Yeah, the biggest fire that we have going, obviously, it's more than just physical. It's worldwide. Is the creep of fascism onto the planet, and they're reinforcing their ranks as we speak. So I think it's important that we follow up with this 2024 Gish Gallup election result and talk to John. Thanks.
Okay, everybody. Like I said, I wish I really was on the beach behind me, but I am in the middle of two of the biggest fires in the world right now, holding my breath, like Paul, like Nancy. And John Fitzgerald, you're up in Maine. You do get the prize for the best beard on the show this week. But what has happened? We had you on. What has happened with the petition to hold Trump accountable to the third section of the 14th Amendment?
Well, thank you, Harvey. This is a very fine question because we did present that. In fact, the clerk of the House under Republican leadership informed us that they would not accept by email or in person the petition to basically do two things to enforce the third section of the 14th Amendment, but only by U.S. Postal Service. So we mailed, with return receipt requested by the good old U.S. Postal Service, a certified registered copy, and we have not yet received the response, but we have tracked it, and they did receive it, whereas the Secretary of the Senate said, oh, yes, we received that. We're going to send it to the parliamentarian. So they did their due diligence at the staff level. Unfortunately, the members fell down a little bit. We had a good California representative with us. We met briefly with Adam Schiff, who knows more about this than any other senator. And his face kind of fell when we asked him what we wanted him to do, which was to resist the actual seating of members of Congress who had voted to support the insurrection in January 6, 2021, when they voted to not count the Pennsylvania and Arizona electoral votes, which were legally cast. Nothing wrong with those then, but it was part of the plan to keep Trump in office. We also asked them not to count the electoral votes this year for Trump because he's patently disqualified. The House of Representatives voted by a majority to find him so disqualified and basically send it to the Senate under the articles of impeachment. Majority of the Senate agreed, not 2/3, which was required for impeachment, but they did agree that he had been basically a prima facie example of what it is to be disqualified by Section 3, which, as you may recall, was a section enacted in 1868 as part of the 14th Amendment that said anyone who takes an oath of office to support the Constitution and then either participates in or aids an insurrection to block the Constitution shall be disqualified from any federal or state office. Now, last spring, the Supreme Court said the Congress has to do something to make that effective. It used to be thought of as self-enforcing. The Congress did not act, and therefore we find ourselves now in the position of having a constitutional right to officials in the government and elected officials not be disqualified by that, but no remedy. I'll remind folks that in 1954, after many years of litigation, our Black community found itself in the same situation. So they asked the Supreme Court, can you please desegregate the schools and give us a remedy for our rights under Section 1 of the 14th Amendment for due process of law in all respects? And the Supreme Court in 1954 in Brown versus Board said, yes, you've got a point there. We're going to have a special hearing next year on how to do that. And they proceeded to start the desegregation in this country, which took another 10 years for legislation to be enacted in the Civil Rights Act of 60, 64, and the Voting Rights Act of 65. So here we are, 2025. We have, in theory, a right, but we don't have a remedy. And so I'm hoping we can get the state of Maine, the state of Colorado to go forward. If we do, as a state, they may have original jurisdiction in the Supreme Court to try to enforce this. We know what the Supreme Court is made up of now, but they're going to be very hard pressed not to find a remedy if someone gets a case in front of them. Barring that, we have to find a good law firm who can handle a case to do this in the district court, the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia, and work our way up, where we have a good circuit. But could be rather difficult. The second point I want to make is that John Brakey was on this call. He and Nathaniel Taylor and other election technology experts have a very good case that there was some very suspicious voting behavior, especially in the swing states and beyond that. That's a second set of claims that could be brought. But I'm no longer in DC, and I was never a full-time litigator, although I oversaw litigation for Defenders of Wildlife for 10 years. We need a good law firm to help us bring this. And I'm basically looking for that now, and we'll see what happens. That's a wrap of that one, Harvey.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. It's a big deal. Once again, the Democratic Party has completely dropped the ball. What else is new? 2000, 2004, 2016, now, 2010. David Saltman, Dave, did you want to jump in here, please?
Yes. Mr. Fitzgerald, I salute you and I congratulate you for making these efforts. I have to say I was absolutely mortified that not a single word of this appeared on the front page of the New York Times. And I wonder, did anybody make a phone call? Why isn't the Denver Post running this? They have some skin in the game because their own state Supreme Court, that's a big and a good paper. Why isn't this on CNN? I mean, this is and this is where the progressives, with all due respect, because this thing originated on this call, at least from my perspective, where we fall down. We've got to let the people know that it was the Democratic Party that refused to consider a constitutionally based petition. And take my word, as a journalist for 45 years, I was an executive producer at Time Warner. I was a big star at CBS News, etc. This is front page news. And it wasn't on any page. It wasn't even on the back page. Who made a phone call? We have, I believe, on this call, a public relations firm. I don't know what ZTO is, but it ain't the New York Times, that's for sure. But good work, at least. Is that the only place it appeared? I mean, that's shameful. And by the way, Mr. Wasserman, my oldest friend in the world, is perfect for Pacifica to make its. Let me propose this. Pacifica breaks the story as a Pacifica story and a copyrighted story and sends it to all the newspapers and to all the front page editors and all the editorial page editors. I think your PR person's name is Eileen Proctor.
Well, she works she works.
Well, let her do the job here, because I used to have these names in my Rolodex. I don't know if you can see my Rolodex. It's enormous. But guess what? They're all dead and they're all retired now. God forbid, it's going to happen to all of us. We need to act right now. And I'm saying this week, this must happen, or else the progressives have no skin in the game anymore. Because if we can't even stand up for something this obvious, what are we doing?
Well, it is like having Jefferson Davis become president of the United States.
Exactly.
But, I did read, by the way, somewhere that it is now the rumor is circulating that Trump will not pardon the January 6th guys. But I mean, we'll believe that when I see it. But, I don't know. John Fitzgerald, have you written up a memo? And then we'll go to Andrew Levis. Have you written up a summary memo on this? And as David said, have you gotten any publicity at all on it?
Like David has said, I've been shocked at the lack of attention to this. I actually was a copy boy at the New York Times and got promoted to clerk and worked on some stuff in the Sunday Times, and they made me a stringer. And I covered the Wheatley speech, but their regular beat guy got the story in first. Muskie's Wheatley speech was a better story than whatever was fully told about what he was actually doing that day when a fake letter to the Manchester Union leader was published. But anyway, hurting his career. So anyway, the bottom line is I'm shocked at that. I've had not much time to do PR, which we should have done more of, but we've been going to people in Congress we thought would act, and including my former Congressman, Jamie Raskin, who did not act. And so we had a meeting in an hour and a half with his council. I've been exchanging emails and documents with her for over a year. She thanked me for them, but she had not even met to talk to Jamie about this 2 days before the you know what hit the fan. So I was shocked at that. So I'm really not quite sure where to start. But yes, going forward, we need to make a story out of this. It's not too late, especially until Trump assumes the position, shall we say. So I'll leave it there for the moment.
Well, amazing. Andrew Levis. Andrew, are you muted here? Let's unmute you. I know you. There you go. Andrew Levis, go ahead.
Thank you. I see Dennis Bernstein's name is on here.
Yeah.
Dennis Bernstein?
It's the Dennis Bernstein.
Wow. Well, there's some people who I think could do some things still. And of course, I salute John. I can't tell you what an amazing knight in shining armor John has been for the last 2 weeks in my life. But I experienced going door to door in Congress and the House of Reps and the senators. And so I got to feel some of that frustration of being treated like some sort of robocaller, annoying the staff there. But I just have to say that it's our only hope. It's our last chance. And I think that it's better to go down at least saying, hey, there's something terribly wrong with what's happening here. We have a system. We have these people that are standing there in uniform. Every one of them took an oath of office to uphold the Constitution. And for Donald Trump to be inaugurated is a violation of our Constitution. It is against the law. And I don't see why these policemen can't say, oh, wait a minute, I took an oath to the Constitution. Section 14.3 says, we can't let this happen. I must stop you. We have to, take his hand off the Bible, take that away, halt this operation. It is unconstitutional for this to go on. And for us to stand here and watch it happen is violating our oath to do that. And since I started watching John in the last 10 minutes here on the internet, got this idea, what about the police union? Because it would seem like these guys know that Trump is an insurrectionist. They know that he turned the public. They know he turned his army on them, and he can do it again. And they don't want to be doing battle against vigilantes and militia that are, we've seen against all enemies, I assume. And anyway, so I want to hear from Dennis Bernstein, what he thinks is going on and what he thinks he can do. And I think Mindy has some interesting ideas. I see she's on the line here. I don't know where Chris Sauder is or any of these other lawyers that I thought were going to help with some of the situation. Where's Glenn Kirshner today? And why isn't he all over this? So I'm still grasping at straws and trying to find help somewhere. And I'm sorry that my background was not in law or organizing, really. So
okay, Anna Georgie, Anna in Western Mass. Anna, you just had a hand up. Did you disappear on us? Steve Caruso, go ahead, Steve.
Now?
Yeah.
Oh, no.
There you go, Anna.
Yeah, okay. So we've got quite a good local media in Western Mass and many contacts, all the universities here. I'm part of the organizing committee for our projects for 2025. We expect over 100 people, maybe more. We're doing a lot of media, but I don't have time to pull this together, but someone has to just really, without, no big rhetoric, just put it down. And also this editorial was in the progressive newspaper in Berlin, in Germany, when I was there, right after the election. It's by a woman from Princeton, who was a teacher there. They knew what they did. In other words, basically saying this country is full of right-wing, So this is so important to get this out. And I haven't seen it put together. People are talking about the closeness of the vote, in different areas. But to put this together with some of the gerrymandering, if possible, but at least this thing about, the bullet ballots and, the missing things. So please put it on your website.
Well, we have a number of issues. Thank you, Anna. We have the 14th Amendment, the question that Greg Palast has raised about mass disenfranchisement, which would have changed the outcome, and Steve Scudamore's stuff about the computer manipulation. That needs, I think, all be collated or compiled and put into a coherent, at least a memo, so that because Bob Petrakis and I wrote 6 books about what happened in Ohio in 2004. Greg Palast wrote extensively about Florida 2000. Nobody's saying a word about this election, and of course the Democrats are just there. And we have to remember the amazing moment at the start of this century when the Black Caucus in the U.S. House of Representatives demanded a hearing on the delegation that was coming up from Florida for George W. Bush because of the improprieties that had happened in Florida. And I think there were 19 members of the Black Caucus of the House, and they demanded under the Constitution a hearing, but they needed 1 senator. And Al Gore, who was the vice president presiding over the Congress, strong-armed all the Democrats, and there was not a single senator who came forward in 2000 to have a hearing on the election outcome in Florida, despite an armed insurrection. It was an armed attack. They weren't actually armed, but they were violent in South Florida that broke up the vote count. And the Democratic vice president of the United States would refuse to allow a constitutionally mandated hearing on that. Steve, did you want to say something? We'll go to Dennis and then David.
Yeah, Kirshner's been on with Brian Tyler Cohen quite a bit about, and of course you have Jessica Denson, which Harvey invited to this meeting, but she, I don't know, beside herself, I'm sure, like a lot of us are. And there are people out there doing stuff, and there's more than you know. So please stop saying that there's nobody doing anything, because we're here. And if we started banging pots and pans outside, your ears would drums would. So sorry.
All right. Thank you.
There's a lot happening. We also have here is Ann Wilcox, the former president of the Lawyers Guild out of DC. I don't know if she wants to talk. I hope I'm not putting her on the spot. If she has anything to say.
All right, Ann, if you want to speak up. Anybody else want to speak up? We're running out of time. We're going to stop at the top of the hour. So you got 28 minutes to speak your piece here. Anybody want to jump in, please do. Dennis Bernstein, and then Dave Saltman, and then Patricia Gratian.
Yeah, just in response to Andrew, and thank you for sort of being concerned that not enough is being done. One of the things that we've been doing at Flashpoints, and we'll do it again today, is dealing with whole communities who are now living in terror based on the threats coming down from Trump. 2 million people being deported. It doesn't matter if it's true or false. People are living in terror now. So we're doing everything that we can in terms of angles at this point to help people organize to protect themselves against what could be coming in their direction. So that's generally what we've been up to. And if you have any suggestions on that front, please get in touch with us. But there are tens of thousands, millions of terrified people who are fearing being thrown out of the country, whole families. It's a tough time.
Yes, indeed. Thank you for that, Dennis. Dave Solomon and then Patricia Gratian.
Let's see. Mr. Fitzgerald, a suggestion about the Washington law firm you might be looking for. Try Swanken and Turner.
Swanken and Turner.
Yes.
Right, gotcha. Also, our friend at the Lawyers Guild might be helpful too.
Brianna Georgie, I don't know if she's still here, but and Harvey, you're going to laugh when I say this. I believe Clarence Fanto is still writing for the Berkshire Eagle.
Oh, God.
That's a big paper. I know you're
go back 50 years, Clarence. Okay. There really is a Clarence Fanto, and
he's a very good journalist.
Right, and we will not call Dewey, Cheatham, and Howe, but
Swanken and Turner, they're very good at dealing with the government and government officials. Really good at it.
And Wilcox has her hand up.
One last thing, and Harvey, I just can't stress enough what a fabulous opportunity, in my opinion, this is for Pacifica. You mentioned Al Gore. What happened? Air America disappeared, And there's a big hole waiting to be filled. And Pacifica, with this story, is in a perfect position to fill it, in my view.
You're right. Absolutely.
I rest my case.
Patricia, and then Ann, and then Claire. Go ahead, Patricia, please.
Yeah, I think it's very urgent that we continue to push both the Duty to Warn from Spoonermore and the Vigilantes Inc. movie from Greg Palast, because this is going to bite us in all upcoming elections, especially the stolen software that the MAGA people had 3 years to study, and that to our knowledge has not been addressed by the voting companies, by the electronics companies. And we obviously, if the counting companies are derelict on that, we are going to have all of our elections stolen from us. We have to keep this as an urgent matter, whether or not, the 14.3 thing. Unfortunately, we are near the end of being able to use that, but the election problem is continuing. All of the gerrymandering that Greg Palast points out, plus all of the voters who were purged off of voting counts. Everybody continues to claim, oh, the people didn't care enough, and that's why we lost. And instead of saying they got purged off the votes,
Absolutely.
Thank you. Also, I think we need to look into getting the constitutional agencies involved, because these people have a lot of lawyers, and I think they have a very good name, and that is Crew and Brennan Center and Public Citizen, Common Cause, perhaps. There are many organizations that care very much about our Constitution and about legal matters, and they would have the legal clout to help us. So if we could get them involved, it's really important. Duty to Warn and Greg Palast Vigilantes Inc., please push these out to every community you know. Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia. Ann Wilcox, and then Claire Rosenfeld. Ann?
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I am active with the NLG in DC. I'm to make 2 quick points. One is, I think it was a political calculation that the Democrats criticized the Republicans so much 4 years ago for what they did to try to block the vote, that they sort of vowed that they weren't going to do that this year, for a political reason. They didn't want to show the same level of disruption. But then also the Congress had reformed the law in the years since the last, the insurrection. There's a law passed that clarified what the vote counting procedure is and said that it's really more ceremonial. And they also increased the numbers of senators and congressmen congresspeople that had to sign on to an objection. So in other words, they made it harder. You couldn't just have one senator and one member of Congress, to object to the vote total. So that's an important change that Congress made. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann. And, the great irony, or one of the great ironies of election protection, is that in 2000, when the Black Caucus wanted a recounting, or at least a discussion, at least a discussion of what happened in South Florida, the Democrat, the Al Gore, who was actually the candidate and the vice president, stopped them from having it, stopped the constitutional process. But in 2004, when it was challenged from Ohio, and you had one congresswoman, Stephanie Tubbs Jones, and one senator who stepped forward, Dick Cheney was the vice president, and he let the inquiry go ahead. So, Dick Cheney was way to the Democratic side, small d, of Al Gore. There you go. Claire Rosenfeld, please.
Hi, it's Rosenfield, by the way. I heard a program that was based on NYIC, New York Immigration Coalition, and it gave some very important advice that if ICE comes to your door, you do not open it. They have to have a judge sign a warrant. They have to have all kinds of legal things, and you can say, I'll speak to my lawyer, but you don't open the door, because if you do, they will also confiscate your cell phone. So you should keep that safe. I mean, it's just scary as can be. And everywhere you go, carry whatever ID you have with, if you have a driver's license. I have somebody that works for me, and she spent the day after the election crying all day long. And she's been here 30 years.
Yeah.
And paid a lawyer to get herself, and her children are born here. And even the children born here to undocumented parents are threatened now by the Trump idea. So
unreal. John Fitzgerald and Dennis Bernstein.
Thank you. I'd like to respond to a couple of things. Of course, the suggestion has been made that we try to involve Free Speech for People, Crew, Common Cause. I've reached out to them for weeks on this issue, and they have not responded. We give them $100. That didn't count. So somebody else can try to reach out to those folks. They've got great work, but they need to come on to this stage now. And I was DC chapter director of Common Cause in the 70s. But, I've talked to those folks, and they haven't done anything on this. So we have a lot more people who need to weigh in here, because one person hasn't been able to do it so far. In regard to the Electoral Vote Count Act amendments of 2022, that act is unconstitutional as applied because it is blocking our ability to enforce and enjoy the Constitution. And it's not unheard of for the courts to rule statutes being unconstitutional, as we've had since Arbery versus Madison. And that's what they need to do here, because it's an insurmountable barrier to get majority of both houses to vote for a challenge to electoral votes, which the new statute requires, in addition to 1/5 of each house signing the motion to even bring it to the floor. So that's a silly law, and I'm afraid it was enacted without careful thought. I'll stop there.
Thank you. Dennis and then Sandy Bozenius.
I'm very quick. In follow-up to what to do when the police arrive, don't ever sign anything, period. Do not sign any document, no matter what threat or whatever, because you will disappear almost immediately if you put your name down on the thing that they want you to sign. So do not sign. Seek out legal counsel whenever you can. And I'm going to be working on this nonstop in terms of access to this kind of counsel. We're going to be doing a lot of it about that in terms of programming, and we will make that available.
Well, Mike Hirsch and I talked earlier, and Dennis, you should be a part of this. John, there should be a national network of legal resources so that people can instantly have somewhere to go. There should be a unity of the ACLU, the Lawyers Guild, the Brennan Center, all the people who are involved with immigration. There should be a central location so that if the knock is on your door, you can call. There should be a fleet of lawyers ready to go here.
There are a group of people, Camilo Perez Bustillo, in conjunction with the National Lawyers Guild. Many organizations are actually organizing now, and there's going to be a lot more talk about that. But that's good. Those are good thoughts, Harv.
Thank you, Dennis. Sandy Bozenius and the belly of the beast here.
Yeah. Oh, let me turn this. Sorry.
You're good.
I have both of my phone on too. So anyway, my suggestion is maybe impossible, but it seems to me sometimes I'll turn into right-wing radio, and it's really horrendous to listen to. It's very hateful. It's not fun. Sorry. And so my suggestion is what we've all been talking about anyway. Is there any way to buy radio stations on the cheap, or one national radio station? It would get, a lot of us would donate to it instead of NPR or something. And just get one national radio station and just run the things that I hear all the time on progressive podcasts and media, this show, others, and introduce, if we just had one, they can have 8 of their TV programs, and radio stations can run the regular stuff. But I think if people start hearing us who aren't used to hearing these kind of things, I mean, these people are knowledgeable. You guys are all knowledgeable, entertaining, kind, not hateful, self-effacing, honest and transparent. And the key would be saying, this is non-corporate funded media.
Pacifica. We have Pacifica, and we're always just hamstrung by the internal process, but Pacifica is there and should be used. And it's just an endless struggle to make Pacifica into what it needs to be, but it is there.
Is it able to be on radio stations in rural areas too?
Yeah, we have 250 affiliates at Pacific,
Hmm.
but it's just hugely underutilized for
Well,
reasons of internal dysfunction. Just have to face that reality.
Well,
Reason
thanks
is
for hearing me out.
Judith Schoenbaum, go ahead, and
I couldn't.
Dennis thankfully is on Pacifica, and he makes a go of it, but here we are.
I couldn't find my hand raised, so I just raised my
Go ahead,
hand.
you're good. Go ahead, and we're almost done.
There's free speech you can get on computer, and it has all of the radio stations. It has incredible programming. Well, Stephanie Miller, who's in LA, and forgetting
Rhodes, Randy
yeah,
Rhodes.
Yeah, but it's a great source. All kinds
Well,
of different.
here and there are bright spots in Pacifica,
Oh
but
yeah.
but the dysfunction that we struggle with every day has made it very, very difficult to bring it to its full potential. So, but it's a good point, and well, you're in Columbus, Sandy, and you have GRN there. I think there are actually two Pacific stations in Columbus, and we have Lynn Feinerman here has a radio show. Go ahead, Lynn.
Oh, hi. Yeah, just as a response to Sandy, since we're about out of time, I have a friend who's a very famous storyteller, and she was a host for the National Storytelling Festival in Jonesboro, Tennessee. And she and her husband went out for a bite one day, and they walked into a place that looked like a bar. It was sort of a restaurant, had a gigantic TV. And on the TV was Fox News. And, she and her husband couldn't stand too much of it. So she asked him to go and ask if they changed the channel. And he went up to the bartender and he said, "Excuse me, could we put on CNN?" And the bartender said, "What's CNN?" Okay, that's CNN. Okay. And the extensive network of Clear Channel and other Christian right-owned radio networks in this nation is appalling. And there is very little opportunity to have any kind of dialogue, even in a centrist way. Egberto Willis, who's on KPFT, which is part of the Pacifica network, actually managed to have, shall we say, something of a conversation with a right-wing radio host. I forget the guy's name, but anyway, it was still really, really difficult and not really very in depth. So that's just my response to Sandy Bolzanius, and I really understand, what you're talking about, Sandy.
Thank you for that, Dennis. Go ahead.
I can guarantee you. I can guarantee you that Pacifica and KPFA in the Bay Area here have had an impact and get people's attention. I remind you that in 1999, a board who took over locally hired a private police force with background CIA, FBI to shut down the radio station. I had to get arrested on the air and dragged off to speak up against the network that could have disappeared back in 1999. So I know a lot about the power of the radio network. I do wish that programmers, instead of trying to eat each other for a time, would work together, and there really would be a community. But right now, Pacifica Radio, in the context of what's been going on, the cutbacks, we're doing our best and we're making a difference.
Absolutely. And Dennis is right at the forefront of that. Thank you, Dennis. Steve Caruso, if you want to get your word in edgewise here, we're going to dissolve in 10 minutes. So please jump in if there's something you want to say.
This show is aired on Pacifica in Columbus. Tom Hartman is always talking about the right-wing radio and how they manage to take over the airwaves and push the right-wing agenda and stuff. 3 hours a day, that show is on our station, our local low-power FM station in Columbus, Ohio, which is a major metropolitan area. And so there's plenty going on in that respect. But Tom Hartman is on for 3 hours from noon till 3 p.m. On that station. and he's just, on point 99.9% of the time and talking about what needs to be talked about in the progressive arena. So we're out there. I mean, we are the minority, believe it or not. You wouldn't think so. And the fact that this election seems to be stolen by some gish gallop logic is not beyond the truth. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Okay, anybody else want to jump in? We're basically at the end here. Anybody want to raise a hand? And this has been another amazing session. We still have 68 people with us, the longest attention span of any major radio show in the country. Okay, it looks like, so John Fitzgerald, we do want to get a summary memo from you. We do want to, as at the suggestion of Dave Saltman, try and take your work to the airwaves, to the media. We want to raise whatever other issues need to be raised before this election fades off into the distance and we descend into the deep dark of whatever's coming next. I will say the one thing that I've found most amusing and hopeful in the last few weeks is the mud wrestling going on between Steve Bannon and whatever that guy's name is, Elon Musk. I mean, it does appear that the right wing is every bit as capable of eating its own as the left. And as far as I want to say, bon appetit, guys. Mary Elizabeth Jackson, did you want to speak up? Anybody else? We're going to go away. Go ahead, Mary.
Mindy Gallegos wanted to talk. I don't know. She doesn't know
Oh,
how to
Mindy,
raise her hand.
if you want to say something, I don't know if you can.
Yeah, thanks. I had something I wanted to pose to John Fitzgerald. I was wondering, so with the executive order that we're under for the current sanctions with Russia and Iran that were imposed back in December, part of that order basically gives additional time for resolution of issues that are found. So it's actually an order that Trump created back in 2018 that Biden elected to extend in September of this year when we found out about one of the breaches on the Treasury website. So Biden extended this executive order 13848. They have 45 days from the day of the election to, basically say, yes, we're gonna, use this order. And then within that 45-day period, that happened on roughly December 19th or 20th. It got very little press other than the obvious, sharing that Russia and Iran and a few others are under sanctions. However, within that, there's a time period to allow for extensions of what we know is our usual inauguration schedule, etc. So my question to you is, okay, so first of all, let me back up a little bit. When you finish the first 45-day period, it's a neutral process. So these were outside intelligence agencies, Department of National Intelligence, Attorney General, Secretary of Homeland Security. They're the ones that do the initial investigation, and then they turn their report into Biden at the end of the 45 days. So that's when Biden would have received it right around December 20th. And then he basically has his time to decide how to address what has happened, which he came up with the sanctions. So after that, they have 30 days, which ends in January 19th. And when you coincide that with the fact that the DOJ manual basically says that if foreign interference is suspected, that they have to certify the election before they can take it any further. So I guess what I'm wondering is, aside from the first 45 days, is there any way to know that this time, this calendar is ticking and that they're exercising this piece of the order that is in effect right now?
I'll tell you what, I read that only in part It's a very long executive order. I agree with most of what you said. I did not find the extended calendar of inauguration in that. I'm not sure that they could do that. It's in the Constitution, the schedule. Nonetheless, it's a very interesting issue, and I suggest people ask their members of Congress the questions you're raising, because that's the most effective way to do that. And I'll leave it there. I can't confirm that I found that part of it. I did read the other Justice Department manual part that you sent. That's very useful and very interesting. But the operative question about the schedule is something I can't opine on because I haven't got there. But thank you for
Well,
forwarding.
you two should be in touch with each other. If you can post your contacts in the chat real quick, that'd be great. I appreciate it. Very good stuff. Thank you for raising it. Mindy Gallegos, then Nicole Ung, and then we're going to sign off. Mindy, did you want to say anything, Mindy Gallegos?
No, I'm good. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. Nicole Ung, you'll get the last word here.
Mary Elizabeth.
Yes,
had
thank
her
you.
hand up.
I would like to find out if we can ask President Biden to revoke Elon Musk's security clearance. The Action Network and several organizations have already asked for it, and they have already 101,000 signatories on just Action Network alone.
That's a good idea. I think what we should do is send Elon Musk to Robben Island. I think that would be fitting. But that's a good point. I think that, by the way, Steve Bannon has already asked that Elon Musk's security clearance be revoked. I think he wants his visa revoked or whatever and sent back. So, but that's a good point, Nicole. Thank you very much.
Elon Musk has citizens.
Oh, all right.
That's
Well, I think
a
what we should
non-starter.
do is have Elon Musk move to Greenland. That would be very fitting. You could do it. Tesla.
Mars would be better. Thanks.
Mars. Well, okay. Mary Elizabeth, did you have something you want to say? And then it's 3:59.
Yeah, you can hear me, right?
Yeah, but we're going to rock and roll.
I'm on my smartphone.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, because we're going to go.
And I've got it put down here because I don't have my teeth in right now and I look weird.
You look fine. Just go ahead.
Just go ahead.
Okay,
Go ahead.
it's just I got really kind of scared when you're talking about that they couldn't use as much as they wanted to. They kept getting blocked from using the 14th Amendment and all that. Can anybody give me a little bit of more of a reassuring message to
You want the short answer? The short answer is no. It's worse than you think.
Oh.
So, or as Bertolt Brecht said, he who laughs has not yet heard the bad news. No, the Democratic Party has completely folded its tent. It raised no issue whatsoever about disenfranchisement or computer hacking or the 14th Amendment, as well raised by John Fitzgerald. So, that's where we stand. And we're about to be inundated with an indescribable situation. And we will be back next week to start, which will be Martin Luther King Day, by the way. January 20th is Martin Luther King Day. And that's how we will refer to it. Everybody, thank you so much. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Steve Caruso, for engineering. Mike Hirsch. John Fitzgerald, did you raise your hand there for a last word?
Just to say goodbye, and thank you very much, Harvey. That's about it.
That's about it for me too. Everybody, no nukes. Let's shut these reactors down, and we're in for a wild ride, folks. So, hasta la vista, and no nukes, and we'll see you in Solartopia.
Take care, everybody.
And pray for our houses here in LA. We still got a few days of extreme nervousness.
Like and share this video. Help us get the word out.
Okay, everybody.